Yes, sir. So we'll start with the next session here. Okay, we'll go to the new standard today. So before that, we will have a quick recap of what we had learned yesterday. Now, previously, yes, we started with the, now we will slowly forget. Means slowly forget means we will not forget. We'll slowly reduce the revision part of the previous one. So we started with essay 300. So when you talk about essay 300, four things you should remember. Audit plan, 7 concepts, strategy, 5 concepts, program, 3 concepts, execution, 4 concepts. That's it. Now this will get expanded. Now that will may get expanded. So yes, in your brain you have this. SA 300 means primarily 4 areas. Audit planning, strategy, program. Then you can relate to the question depending upon the keyword. Then you should say, okay, what they are trying to ask here. Then we started with the SA 600. So what is your objective? Objective is to establish the standard between for a coordination purpose. When principal auditor is using the work of a component auditor. What is the component? It's a division, it's a subsidiary, it can be a joint venture, anything whose financial information will be consolidated with the parent's information. So SA 600 is not applicable to management expert, not applicable to your team members. It is not applicable to your internal auditors expert, which is only applicable to the other auditors, okay, who are also like qualified like you. So what is that you need to do? What is your procedures? Okay, so we can say the first procedure is I need to evaluate whether I can acceptance as a principal auditor. What are the factors you consider? The materiality of what you are going to audit, the risk of the branch which you are not auditing, then your knowledge about that branch, and other procedures of SA. That means SA is going to tell you certain set of procedures. Are you able to perform that? Depending upon that, you can accept as a principal auditor. Second, you need to consider the professional competence. Okay, if it's a member of ICI, you need not do it. The third, okay, you have to perform certain set of procedures. Because okay, you need to perform procedures. Because what the branch auditor is going to give you, branch auditor is going to give you branch audit report. Now, is that report okay for you? Is that sufficient for you? Can you straight away consolidate? How do you know? See, everything starts first with the, okay, this is I can say sub activity is the advice. Okay, we should start giving advice. The principal auditor should advise something. Agree with me? See, if that other person is your subordinate, we would have used the word called direction. So advice is another name for a direction. So anything starts with one advice. Like I am advising you, please write the test and update this data. Okay? Or I can say I am directing you. So the first step is to advise. Now question comes, what to advise? Okay, first thing you need to advise about the end use of the work. Now the branch auditor might have been preparing audit report thinking it is the local requirement there. He is thinking that this must be submitted to the banker. Management must be using. Right? How he is on earth he is aware? Or that this a principal auditor is also using it. So first you need to tell like what is that you are going to use it for? Consolidation. Now that person has got a clarity. Like I told you one example. Like a doctor is sending a patient to a scanning department. So scanning is somewhere far away. So first of all, like what exactly you want to scan, like how the doctor is going to use it. So you need to advise that end use. Then you need to advise special consideration. Like for example, this patient has got a diabetes. Okay, you need to tell Baba, this patient has got a diabetes. When scanning, keep this in mind. Similarly, if you have got certain special considerations to be given in that particular branch, like treasury audit has been started. Okay, what is the materiality level has to be set. So these are all the things I have to advise who the principal auditor. The third one, all intercompany transactions. Okay, they may be into different ERP systems. Okay, so I want to identify, I will tell them, look, this is my procedure to identify the intercompany transaction, because at the consolidation level, it has to get eliminated. See, that branch auditor is not concerned about the intercompany transaction. For me, for him, it is that branch financial statement is the complete statement. But for me, intercompany transaction has to be eliminated. So they can help me with that. Then other accounting, standards on auditing related matters, regulatory matters, I need to advise. So these are all the 4 advices I need to give. And this is in a very soft language, you are telling advice. Actually, it is more like a direction. We are giving one instruction. Look, Baba, this is the way I am going to use your work. These things I require. These things you keep special consideration. Okay. Then I can say that the second procedure goes like, once you have given an instruction, second, you need to do the review. Yeah. Because based on your advice, he must have done some work. So you need to review. So first question comes, how do you review? See, it's very important, students. Like discussing verbally, you may have to you may discuss, but discussing verbally may not help. Okay, I can also give an analogy like this. I am the teacher here, sitting here. You are all the students sitting at a very far away place. Can you imagine my situation, students, how I have to coordinate with all of you? Verbally, I am talking, I don't get a clarity only what is happening, because I want you to do so many procedures. Okay, I have to give you certain set of special consideration. Okay, what is that special considerations? I say that, look, Baba, 4 things are very important. Attending classes is important. Okay, taking tests is important. Okay, making notes is important, and making that memory mind map is important. See, these are, homework is important and mind map. These are all the 4 elements I stress. This is very important for you. Now, how I coordinate with you, have you doing it? See, verbally talking to you, I get more confused. So I need to coordinate after this thing, no? So followed, no? I hope you are clear. So next thing is I have to review. So how to review? So best thing is have something in the form of a written summary. See, you write in the homework book, day 1, mark 3. This is a summary of what you have been doing there. By looking at that summary only, I may not see what you are writing. But day 1, day 2, day 3, if I can see that particular summary, I have not a confidence, because I trust you, that you have been doing it. This is what the standard also says. Unless the suspicion comes, you can rely on the work of other auditors. I hope you are getting. So get that written summary. That written summary can be in the form of a checklist. See, this homework book is like a checklist. Or it can be in the form of a questionnaire. Okay, I can ask you certain set of questions. Have you done this? Okay, like you see that daily update. Okay, I have changed. Instead of part and all, I have written chapters, because part 1, part 2, it is going to take a hell lot of time and too much of resource consumption. I have changed the Google form. Okay, where you have to just update, have you completed the chapter or have you not completed the chapter. So this is more like a written summary now. Okay, then what else I can do? How I can review? I can visit. Okay, if you are here, I can just go and visit your workplace. I can see what you are doing there at home. Okay, then nature, timing and extent of my activities, like whether I will visit or whether I'll ask for written summary, whether I will talk over the phone, to what extent I will follow you up. All this depends on knowledge about the competence of the other auditor, and it depends upon the circumstances of the case, like materiality. Okay, so how much I am going to follow you up, okay, to what extent or how I am going to do it, whether I am going to come there physically to your workplace, or whether I will sit here and tell, I will send you a questionnaire, I may ask a checklist. All this depends upon the materiality what we are going to set and the knowledge about the competence of the other auditor. And last thing, this knowledge is going to increase based on the as and when we experience, work with each other, no? My knowledge is going to get improved. Don't you find, students, is it not the same principle the principal auditor has to apply? Why? Because at the end, the principal auditor has to get that assurance that there are no material misstatements. Okay, what is misstatement? Expectation and the reality. Yes, I hope it's clear. This time it's much more clear, and they have given you this in the form of a picture now. Okay, then you see, student, you gave an advice, you made the review. Now, once the auditor is going to perform, is he not going to find the significant findings? So he may have some findings because he followed your instructions. And when the following the instructions, some findings came into picture. Like for example, when I'm telling you write the test, you may end up with getting certain doubts. Okay, when I say do this homework, you may have certain set of doubts like why I should be writing this. Similarly, what should I do? I may have to discuss that finding and perform supplementary tests. This is the two things we are supposed to do. And the last one, see, I think they have missed in the study material. Okay, when the professional auditor, so these are all the professional procedures, I can say. Procedures are advising, reviewing, and checking the findings. That's the only three advice. Okay, they have given in the form of a para. But what I can say, there are three procedures you need to perform. First, you advise them what you want. Second, you review, have they done it? And check what they have found out by performing it. And if the other auditors are not competent, then all these above procedures are having added advantage. This is what they are trying to tell in that sixth point. Okay, and the last thing, what I'm supposed to do is documentation. Yeah, which we are doing. Okay, we are all having fantastic documentation, like who are the components. Okay, like don't we have the list of student registration? That's like who are those components, what procedures we perform. Okay, what is the discussion, and if somebody is given a modified opinion, like how that modification has been dealt with. So this is how it is written. So first essay says that first you need to accept, second you need to check the professional competence, third you have to perform the procedures, and fourth you may have to document. Next element they talk about the coordination. So when you talk about the coordination, yes, you need to have a liaison, means relationship in the form of written letters, written documentation. Okay, other auditor should find significant findings. Third, you need to advise any matters of importance, what is their important for them. And then the other auditor has to answer the questionnaire and submit on the timely basis. And the last aspect is your reporting. Okay, can you mention the other auditor in your report? Answer is yes. If you are going to mention, you have to state in other matter paragraph that this particular component you have not worked, but so and so auditor has worked. I hope students, yeah, this quick review, because I felt that this particular portion was not much clear. And again, my mind was also not, like there are a lot of system issues and all came, a lot of problems are there. So when we set our mind, I told no, always problems comes. Yeah, but I hope now it is much more clear to you, like what procedures auditor has. And we see there are a lot of questions revolving around this procedures only, and they have given in the form of a picture, graph, okay, those many things. Yes, so today we will proceed with the SA 610 using the work of internal auditor. Now, before this, I would like to give you one example or one story, students, okay, which you are already aware. Now, this is the story of Mahabharata. Okay, what is that significant event happened which resulted into the Mahabharata war? Okay, the central theme of this Mahabharata war was Draupadi Vastrapahana. You know that. Now, when that incident happened, Draupadi Vastrapahana happened, okay, it could have been prevented actually. Okay, I can say Draupadi Vastrapahana is more like a material misstatement. Okay, material misstatement could have been prevented so that bigger consequences could have been avoided. Now, in that, internally, in that Asthan, we can say internal, who are sitting at that point of time? Okay, there were three people who were sitting, who could have stopped it. One is Bhishma, who could have said one sentence, in front of me, I will also see how you will do this. Now tell me, who could have dared to fight Bhishma? No. Drona could have told. Karna could have told. Because these were the people who could have actually prevented, who are sitting inside that organization at that point of time there. But none of them spoke. Two people actually objected. If their mind was there with any of these people, no, Draupadi Mahabharata war would not have happened. Now, who are those two people? One, you have got Vidura. He objected and he walked away from there. He resigned. He's also an internal person there. He said, what is this nonsense happening? I don't accept it. And there was one more person called Vikarna, who is one of the brother of Duryodhana out of 100 people. That's why Bhima made one pratigna that I am going to kill all Kauravas. But he said Vikarna when killing, look, I don't want to really kill you. Okay, just because of the oath I am going to kill you. But you are the only one person that day who stood and told this is not correct. But you tell me, students, despite this five set of people, why they were not able to prevent it? They were all the internal people who could have prevented it. They did not prevent. Why? What they were lacking? See, primarily, these people were lacking something called objectivity. Their judgment, they got confused. They got confused about their role. They were biased, I can say. Karna was biased because he said, Duryodhana is my friend, how I can talk against him? Drona was biased. He thought that I am an employee. How can I speak against my employer? Bhishma got biased. I say, what is my role? I don't know. I am just here to safeguard the Hastinapur. Okay, they are taking decisions, they are only doing. It's a clear-cut objectivity issue. Now, these people were very objective. They knew that this is not correct. Okay, they were not subjective. These people are all subjective. Okay, they were all judgmental. But they were objective, like MCQs. But what they lacked, no, they lacked competence. You see, students, when the objectivity or a competence is lost, somebody who is sitting inside the organization, despite they are very highly qualified, highly professional, they will not be able to prevent or detect that material misstatement. Now, who prevented that material misstatement? External person. Who? Krishna. Who is that? External auditor. Now, he came and prevented. Why? Because he is objective. He is competent. That's what you are supposed to do in SA 200. You should start fundamental principle. They said no, you have to be professional, competence, due care, and what? Okay, and you need to be very objective. Since external auditor had it, so he could prevent it. He could bring a different perspective to the workplace. Okay, keeping this example in mind, let us understand how SA 600 has been organized. Let us see certain factors to evaluate. Like, see, who is SA 600 internal auditor? Baba, internal auditors are like our family members. Like, there are two, like this is external auditor, this is internal auditor. They both belong to the same religion called as chartered accountants. They did the articleship together, they wrote the same examination. The external auditor didn't write separate different exam. Both wrote the same exams. But what the path they have taken was different. Somebody wanted to become independent and somebody was dependent. Whatever. That's their choices. We cannot comment on that. But point here is, can we take the work of this person's? That's the question. That's what we are trying to evaluate here. Okay. And the crux of this particular thing, what is that we are going to evaluate, is primarily two things. When we say, please understand the terminology, internal audit function. See, you need to understand what is the meaning of a function. Function means department. Okay, we call it as a business functions. Like accounting is a function. Function means set of activities, which is very similar to each other. So we can also replace the word internal audit function with the internal audit department, because these terminologies may create confusion in you. So I hope you are clear. Function means department. Now, when you talk about an internal audit department or taking the work or help of internal audit department, see, primarily this standard is revolving around the two elements. Can we take their work? Can we take their people? Can we take their people? See, what is their work? Internal auditor's report. So can I use their report? People means what? Internal auditors staff, human beings. Can I use those human beings to do my audit work? So entire standard is revolving around use of the work of internal audit function or using of the direct assistance of the internal audit function. So remember this terminology, don't get confused. Function means department. Work means their report, internal auditor's report. Assistance means their people. You want to you don't want to use their work, but you want to use their people to get your job done, some of the work. Yes, so now we'll move on to the standard SA 610, and I hope you have got a study material volume 2 also. Simultaneously, we have to study chapter number 16 also along with this, because some components have been given there. If you see the test your knowledge, test your understanding, they have not asked any question here, but in chapter number 16, they have asked so many test your knowledge questions related to this chapter. Anyhow, there are overlapping. There is something different. We will see that together and let us have that clarity. First, what is the external auditor's responsibility for audit? Yes, we already discussed. We may be using the work of so many people like expert, management expert, internal auditor, okay, so many. Only in one place we can shift that responsibility. That is when you have worked the other auditor, SA 600. So in this case also, external auditor has got the sole responsibility. He is no opinion on the opinion, and it is not used by the use of the work or direct assistance on the engagement. That means you could have used their work or you could have used their people, but you cannot shift that responsibility telling like I took their work and this mistake they should have found out. No, you have to ultimately own that. Now, they may perform audit procedures very similar to what you are doing. Okay. However, neither the internal audit function means department, not internal auditors, that means human beings, are independent of the entity. See, always you need to keep in mind, see, you are an independent external auditor. Those people are really qualified. Okay, you may be the classmates. That person is also fantastic. But always you need to keep one thing in mind, that the internal auditors are not independent to the organization. And when they are not independent, we have already seen what happened in Mahabharata war. Who are we now? Same thing can happen in the workplace also. Misstatements could have occurred. Independent internal auditors may not have been identified. Yes. Now, this is the story. You can read it. So, this standard provides a framework for the external auditor judgment regarding the use of the work or to prevent or undue use of such work. So, external auditor has got the sole responsibility, and it is not reduced by the use of the work or use of the assistant. Yes. So, first part you have understood. First part talks about the responsibility. What is the scope? So, this standard deals with the responsibility of the internal auditors using the work of the internal auditor or using their direct assistance under direction, supervision, and review with the external auditor. Yes, we will move on. Now, what is the objective of the external auditors? This is very important for us because every standard starts with an objective. So, if you are having where an entity has an internal audit function means department. So, you go to a client's location and there you see that organization is having something called an internal audit department, just like finance department, production department, marketing department. Now, when you see that, what is your objective? What is your responsibility? Now, objectives of the external auditor where internal audit function exists, and more importantly, you expect to use their work or you want to use them. In such cases, see, if you don't want internal audit department do not exist, SA 610 not applicable. Internal audit department exists, but you don't want to use their work, you don't want to use their people, you just totally want to ignore them. SA 610 not applicable. But if the function exists and you want to use their work or you want to use their people, what responsibility you carry? First and the foremost, you cannot shift any responsibility on their head. That is the first and foremost thing. Okay, but what type of care you need to take? What type of work you can give to them? What type of work you can use? This is what this standard talks about. So what is your objective in such cases? First, you determine whether can you use the assistance or the work. First thing you see, can you use their work or assistance? That's the first thing. If you decide at the beginning only that I don't want to use their work or I don't want to use their people, first of all, understood now? In such cases, you need not look into the second, and this standard doesn't become applicable to you only. But what if you say, no, sir, I want to use their work? Then, if you are going to use the work, the second objective, you have to check whether their work is adequate for your purpose. Like, type to report. It's not mandatory that you have to use type to report. You can go and visit also. You can perform your procedures. But if you are going to use type to report of a service auditor, you have to check whether that is adequate for your purpose. And what all the factors we discussed in SA 402. Okay. Then what you decide that I will use their assistance. If you are going to use their assistance, then you have got a responsibility to direct them. In previous language, we used to call them advise, supervise them, and review their work. Okay. I hope it's clear. So there are three objectives. So straight away we can start with this objective. Now, what is the meaning of internal audit function and direct assistance? Function of any entity performs assurance and consulting. So what exactly they are doing, internal audit function? So when we talk about internal audit function or department, what accounting department will do? Accounting. What finance department will do? Handle money. What production department? They will do the production. So what internal audit department will do? Primarily, they have got two broad areas of work. That is called assurance service and consulting service. Now, in assurance, they act like independent people inside the organization and they will verify. It is more like an audit. They will check the data. They will check the external confirmation. There are so many things they will do. Okay. This is like a giving assurance to the management of the organization that no frauds are happening, no errors are happening. Consultation means this is like more like a management consultancy service. They give more like advisors. They observe the processes. They help because they are internal. In chapter number 16, we can see internal audit has changed today. It is no more that traditional internal audit. Today, internal audit has got a diverse set of people from the different background. Somebody is a forensic accountant, somebody is from a technical, somebody is an IT department, IT person. So with this blend, you are able to see the organization processes with the different perspectives. So you may end up giving certain set of advisors like do this, do that, improvise this process. So primarily internal audit department or internal audit function does assurance services or consultancy services. Okay. And they can involve into the risk management, okay, to evaluate the entity's governance, risk management and internal control processes. Now what does the direct assistance? So use of the internal auditors only, no function there, to perform the audit procedure by guiding, directing and supervising. Now what is the objective and scope of internal audit function? Please understand, this objective is different from this objective. This is the objective of the external auditor or responsibility of the external auditor when you want to use the work or the function. Now, another question here, what is the objective? Like first of all, why an organization will have internal audit department? What they are going to do? Why they want to have? What is that function? What is the very purpose of their existence? That's called the objective of the function. I hope you will not get confused here. You have to take care of this. So the objective and scope of the internal audit function typically includes your assurance and consultancy services. So primarily they are there to give assurance and consultancy services. So that to evaluate and improve effectiveness of, okay, what is the objective? Activities related to the governance, their scope. Okay, I can say something like this. When you talk about the internal audit function or department, so we have got we need to understand what is their objective, why do they exist, and what they do. What they do primarily two activities. They will do assurance to the management, they will do consultancy. In consultancy, there is no more assurance. They are going to suggest something to do. Here they will independently verify or audit thing. What is their objective? Why they are doing this assurance and consultancy? Okay, so there are three objectives. One, they want to ensure the governance of the organization as a whole. Like what exactly governance we will see. Second, they want to handle risk management and they are interested with the overseeing of the internal control. That means internal controls are operating effectively. So I can say these are all the three objectives. These are all the scope. Yes. Now, what are those objectives of related to the governance? So, internal function, they may be focused on ethics and values in the values. Okay, that means everybody is doing ethical behavior. Okay, the values of the business are ingrained in their work. Management is accountable for their work. That's why, student, the organization structure, you should be aware. Okay, why management accountability is entrusted to them, how ethics and values they can see, and communicating risk and control information. So how can they do it? Why governance is given to them? Are the board of directors have not appointed these people, internal auditors? Then why, how they can check? Like for example, I am hiring someone to look into my work. Arey Baba, I can actually control you. If you talk something about me, I can throw you out. Then why these people comes into picture? For this, no, you need to understand the modern governance structure. First of all, for listed entities and for certain entities, internal audit has been made mandatory by the Companies Act. Okay, which we'll see that later. When you have got an internal audit, generally the organization structure will be like this. You have got a board of directors, who are called the TCWGs. You have got a CEO under them. Across the world, this type of things you can see. Then CEO will have got CFO, CIO, CMO, COO. This is the executive office team. Now, all these people will report to CEO and CEO will report to the board. This is the organization structure where you have got the communication system and all. None of these people will directly go and talk to the board because they have got the reviews and all these things will happen. This is one how the organization structure will look like. Now, where does the internal auditor will sit? Traditionally, internal audit was sitting, see, finance, accounts, internal audit. Traditionally, it was sitting here. When you are sitting in the here, yes, you can be like a tiger when it comes to CIO, CAO, CMO and all. Because you are independent of their function. They are not going to appraise your activities. Yeah, 1 minute. Yes, I'm sorry. So now, see, when you are the internal auditor, you will act like a tiger when its CIO, CMO, COO comes into picture. Because you're totally independent of them. You tell me, students, can you talk about ethics of this CFO only? Now, this become person like become Bhishma, no? Can you tell something to Dhritarashtra? No, he says always I'm an employee. Or Drona, what they can tell? Can he talk to CEO? But if you see here, say they are supposed to do ethics and values, management accountability. Management includes your CEO also. So how they can help in governance? For this, no, the modern organization structure will look like this. They have been removed from this reporting to CFO and they are not even reporting. They could have reported to the board, but the board and the CEO himself could have been that chairman, right? Or they can be that person who is controlling that board generally. That's why the Companies Act brought another structure where in this board only they have created one committee called the Audit Committee, where your majority are independent directors. In the board of directors, majority need not be independent directors. So CEO may be controlling this board, but he cannot control the audit committee there because audit committee has got independent people. They don't have any interest on them. Now audit committee, so this internal auditors are made to report to this audit committee. Now you tell me, students, are they not like now tigers now? They need not bother now anyone. Okay, so they need not be bothered about, first of all, they need not bother about these people, otherwise also. Now they need not bother about CFO, they need not bother about CEO, they need not bother about the board. Why? Because they are directly reporting to the audit committee. What can happen? Audit committee can highlight, they can resign from their post. Okay, that's why the Companies Act wants to ensure independence of these internal auditors. This is how they brought, because they have understood a lot of frauds. They were not detected because what they lacked, no, they lacked objectivity. It's not that they lacked competence. I told no, because internal auditors are our family members only. Both are CS. But what they lack there, the moment they enter as an internal auditor, they lack the objectivity. They become biased. So this is one of the tasks entrusted to them. Then activities related to the risk management, like identifying significant exposure to the risk. So this task is also given to them. Okay, as part of the consultancy they can do, and detection of the fraud. And activities relating to the internal controls also given, like evaluation of the controls, examination of the financial and operating information, operating activity, review of operating and compliance. So here I have to talk to you about something called a SA 315. When you talk about SA 315, one question comes, which we will discuss in chapter number 4 also. In which all areas you will establish internal control? Generally, you will establish internal control for 4 areas: operations, financial reporting, asset safeguarding, compliance with the law. This is when you talk about internal control, these are all the 4 areas you need to have, like operating activities review, financial information review, compliance review. Asset information is missing here, asset safeguarding is missing. I hope it is very easy for you to remember now. And you can differentiate also. They can ask you what is the objective and scope of internal audit function. Scope is 2, objective is 3. Okay. Now, we will start with the work. We will start with the evaluation. See, what is the objective of the external auditor? Okay, I can write the objective here. So, objective are 3. Whether work or assistance can be used. If work can be used, then check whether it is adequate. If assistance is used, then direct, supervise, review. This is what you have got in short and simple language. So let us talk about, okay, requirement also goes like this. First, whether you have to check, can you use their work? We will focus only on one element, work element. Assistance element we will see later. We will just focus on the work element. Now, evaluating whether the work of the internal audit function can be used. Okay, I can give an analogy to you, students. My daughter, okay, she is in a Bharatanatyam, okay, she is learning Bharatanatyam. Now, when I saw she had to write the junior exam. Now, when she was supposed to write the junior exam, a lot of revision practices and all to happen. Now, who is internal auditor at home? Mother. Correct? She takes care of everything now. She is every aspect. Mother is like an internal auditor, right? Okay. Now, what I saw that her dance teacher has given some assignments to her, which was review was done by her mother, like my wife was overseeing it. Now, my question, can the dance teacher use the work of this internal auditor? Because she has to train, say, 20 students, which she may not be possible. So, can she make this? Because anyhow, this internal auditor is also reviewing what she is dancing, what she is practicing. Can she rely on her work? Keep this in mind when we are talking. And please keep this in the example of the previous Mahabharata war also. Okay, what is the first thing you have to evaluate if you have to decide whether you can use the work? The external auditor shall determine whether the work of internal audit work can be used by evaluating the objectivity of the internal auditor, like whether the function's organization status. What do you mean by this? To which the extent to which internal auditor functions organization status. Function means department. Organization status means organization structure. See, this is your organization structure. So I will give you 2 organization structure where you have got board of directors, CEO, CFO, internal auditor is sitting here. Internal audit function is sitting here. Board of directors, audit committee, internal audit, CEO, internal audit is sitting here. You tell me, among both the situation, where you feel the internal auditor is more objective? Situation number 2. That's what you need to evaluate, whether the functions, organization status and their policies and procedure support the objectivity. First thing you have to verify. Second, do they have the level of competence? Vidura and Vikarna. Okay. And third, do they have a disciplined approach, including quality control? Whether this function, see, somebody can be very objective, students. Please understand. Somebody can be very competent. Like, for example, I give you another example of a doctor. You see some instances where doctors drink and come to the hospital. See, they are objective. They know exactly how to do the operation. They are not confused. They are very competent. Okay. but they see the indiscipline. Okay, they are not regular, like they are not systematic to work out. That's why when discipline, your objectivity, your competence plus discipline comes into picture, you will become very powerful enough to prevent any misstatement. Agree with me? Discipline is also one of the very powerful component. Okay, objectivity, I can say more like one guidance. Okay, clarity of thoughts. For this you seek some help. You start reading the book, you start approaching the faculties, or they can give you objectivity. Competency is what you should sit and develop using your hands. Please remember this, very important component. And disciplined approach is what you take every day, what you sit, what you work every time. Okay. Now, when you should not use the work if the organization status do not support objectivity, or you lack competence, or both are fine, but there is no discipline. In such cases, you don't take their work. So this is applicable for every aspects of our life. So let us see one test your knowledge to question from chapter number 16. But in chapter number 16, what they have told, okay, let us see simultaneously. If you are opening, please open students, please open chapter number 16. Simultaneously, we'll see there also what they are trying to tell. So there I can go to, I think, 16.33 page number, whatever you can check. Now, using the work of internal auditor deals with certain aspects of relationship between internal and external auditor. So before that, they talk about what is the relationship between internal and external auditor. We'll see that then only. And what is the difference between them. Leave it. These are all small things, simple, chiller. Let us focus only on SA 610. Now, determine which areas to and what extent the internal audit function can be used. Okay, evaluating the internal audit function. Okay, this is more like what is the scope of internal audit function. See, evaluating the internal audit function. So, evaluation of internal audit function includes your appraisal activity, examining, evaluating, and adequacy and effectiveness of the internal control. The scope includes internal controls, financial operations, operating activity, and regulatory and compliances. Scope of internal audit function. So if I have to show you, this is that they are talking. Activities of internal audit. Same 4 elements they have told. And objective of evaluation is to improve the effectiveness of the internal controls. Okay, I don't know in which context they have given this. Means same scope and objective they have given in a different way. Okay, the first thing, determining the nature and extent of the work of the internal audit function. They say that you should not use the work if the organizational status do not support objectivity, lacks competence, or no disciplined approach. See the way they have presented. They didn't tell you here, they didn't start with the objective in chapter number 16. They straight away started with the when you should not use. This portion they told. Anyhow, you understand, no? So you can strike it off and you can give a cross reference here. Because here we are learning together what you need to evaluate and when you should not use. Okay, now let us see, test your knowledge 2 question. Okay, simultaneously we will compare all the 3 elements. State the important aspects to be considered by the external auditor in the evaluation of internal audit function. Okay, important aspects to be covered in the evaluation of internal audit. Look at the keyword, students, what they are expecting you, evaluation of the internal audit function. So this is your test your knowledge 1. That's why I have marked it a priority 1 question. This is, and it's coming from chapter number 16. So external auditors general evaluation of the function will assist him in determining the extent to which they can place the reliance, and he need to document it. So what are the important thing you need to evaluate? The organization status, whether internal, and if you see the answer is totally different from what is there in the study material. So if you want, you can write your own answers there. Organizational status, technical competence, professional due care. You can write that function. So you will get a due marks. Please understand. Either what all the factors you need to consider in the evaluation of the function, you can write this, or you can write what they have told in the test your knowledge. You will get both equally evaluated. But just see what they are doing. They have added here organization status. They say that is there any restrictions on them, whom they are reporting. Okay, this has to be carefully evaluated, and auditor should be free to communicate fully with the external auditor. Then second, you have to evaluate what is their scope of work. is that been restricted? Because generally we have got two scope of work, assurance work and consultancy work. Now what can happen, students, in one of the fraud, okay, for your in Japan, there is one very high famous company, very extremely famous company in Japan, Toshiba, I believe. I don't know. I'm not recollecting. In that, no, 1 billion fraud happened in, okay, your fraudulent financial statements happened. When they saw why internal auditors did not detect, because these investigations will happen, how it missed the internal auditor in Toshiba, I believe. Yeah, 1 billion fraud. You can check in the internet. Then they figured out that this fraud happened in the form of fraudulent financial statement. So when the fraudulent financial statement happens, two important people will be part of it. You take any organization, any organization in the world, one, the CEO will be involved, another CFO will be involved. These two people will be involved. Now in that Toshiba, they saw that the internal audit department was reporting to CFO. Now since CFO knew what type of fraud was happening, he is supposed to define the scope, like what work you should do. He moved them away from assurance work and started to give more and more consultancy work. He told, go and check operations, go and check this asset safeguarding. Don't come to books of account because I am taking care. That's why their scope was very limited when it comes to assurance work. The internal auditor could not find. The external auditor should find out the nature and depth of the coverage. Okay, he should ascertain what extent management consider and what appropriate actions in audit recommendations will they take the recommendations and all. Then you need to check the technical competency, proficiency, and are they taking due care of their work? Are they systematic, planned, supervising, review, documentation, everything is happening. Yeah. So why I told students, I told you, you can write these 3 points or you can write this above answer. But I have marked it priority because I wanted to show you two different versions of the same answer. Yes. So next, once you have done, once you said that, okay, I will be using the internal auditor's work, what the next thing you will do? You have to determine the nature and the extent of the work. Like nature means what? I told you. The first question comes to the nature. Whenever you come across a word called nature, ask one question, what? What type of work? Extent means to what extent I can use. Limited extent or to full extent. Okay. So if you have to decide the nature or scope, I can say, external auditor shall consider the nature and the scope of the work by the internal audit function. Okay. Now, which type of work can be used? Nature of the work. Like you can use their work in testing of the effectiveness, because they are also testing the internal control effectiveness. You can use their work. Can you use them to use substantive procedures? Yes, with the limited judgment. Like what is that? I can give one small example. They have done external confirmation. Can you use their work? No, because external confirmation includes one judgment because that is one of the substantive procedure. Which type of customers to be selected for external confirmation? It's a judgment. High judgment is required. Risk is there. You randomly cannot select any customer there. Now, that work you may not use because or impairment testing they have done. No, you cannot use. But inventory verification they have done. Physical verification of the inventory they have done. Simply you have to count. You can use. Observation of the inventory count. Yes, you can use them. Tracing of the transaction through the information system. What is this tracing of the transaction? If I see one entry, customer account debit to revenue, I trace this from where it came. It came from the delivery. Delivery happened from where? Customer order. Customer order happened from the discussion of the salesman with the customer. Now you trace this journal entry back to the source. This is called a tracing of the transaction. From where these numbers came? What was that original discussion happened? What that original documentation talked about? Testing of the compliance with the regulatory, like they are checking monthly GST returns, okay? They are taking PF returns, okay? You can use them because they are also doing. And in some instances, auditors review of the financial information of the subsidiaries, okay? Because they are also taking care of the subsidiaries, their consolidation and all. Because internally they require this information for the management to want to show them the consolidated information. But if they are not significant only, then only you can use them for the review of the subsidiary information. So are you clear, students? So this is more like, I can say, example of work. Which type of work you can use? Example of work. So you can use this example of work. Are you clear? Yes. Next, the external auditor shall make all the significant judgments in the audit. So, what is that extent? To what extent I can be using it? See, you will use their compliance, but will you do 100%? That you will never check any compliance and you will rely on there, because they said no, you can check the compliance with the regulatory requirement like filing of the GST return, PF, taxation, everything. Now, does it that you will not do any work only? No, they say that you have to make all the significant judgments in the audit engagement and prevent the undue use of the work of the internal auditor and plan to use the less of the function in certain areas. So whenever significant judgments comes, you have to do that judgments. Like I told you about that Bharatanatyam. Now can she be using, yes, for like asking question, because Bharatanatyam question, this junior exam also has got something called a theory. Now can her mother, like my wife, can be used to check the theoretical knowledge? Very perfectly we can use. Why? Because okay, she doesn't have a competence in Bharatanatyam, but theory questions asking is very easy, no? That can be used. But can she use my wife to check whether my daughter is dancing correctly or not, that expressions are correct or not? May not. Why? Because there comes the judgment. Like we look at the Bharatanatyam from one angle, one perspective, because we are not the dancers. But dancers look Bharatanatyam from another angle. They may look into the eyes pupils also, whether it dilated or not. Okay, so much clean observation they can have, but we may miss it. So what that external auditor should do, all the significant judgments they only should do, and they should reduce the work of the internal audit function. Okay, now when question comes, where the significant judgments are going to come? So the more judgments are involved in planning and performing relevant audit procedure. Like planning, don't use them. You have to plan your audit. You don't call them and say, give me one plan. We have seen something like this. Okay, like you are discussing with the planning and you are telling that CFO only. In one of the Q&A of the examination, we saw you are asking CFO only to prepare a plan and give to you of your audit. Nonsense actually. Or evaluation of the audit evidence gathered, Baba, that is your job, because you are expressing opinion. You need to have a basis for that. So there you don't use them. You evaluate and tell me whether that is fine or not. And if you find any area where the high risk of material misstatement is there, yes, don't use the internal audit function work. That work you only, like inventory only. You see that inventory is highly susceptible for fraud. Inventory verification has been done by the inventory. Okay, now first question, can I use the work of internal auditors? Yes. But if this inventory happens to be a high risk area, then don't use. Third, the less the internal audit functions support the organization's status or support the objectivity, that means the moment you feel that they are not much objective or their level of competence is low, like I told, no, Bharatanatyam, my wife's competence in dancing is low, but theory-wise she is good. In such cases, you have to reduce their use of the work and make all the significant judgments yourself. Yeah, it's a very important element, student. This is the very first thing you need to understand. Deciding the nature and scope of the work. So I can treat these elements as the examples of the work which you can use, and this is more like a scope, to what extent you can use. Okay, let us see one test your understanding question. Now, Keshav Raj is conducting the statutory audit of a listed company, and this is coming from your chapter number 3 only. And the listed company name is Live with the Nature Limited. They are into environment friendly niche products like for newborn babies. Fantastic. Okay, you tell one thing that it is organic, everybody will buy that because nobody want to take the risk with the newborn babies today. Once upon a time, forget, nobody used to care. Now there is also a well functioning internal audit department in the company. See, this is the keyword. This gives you one doubt. Is this related to chapter 16 or chapter 3? We don't know at this point of time, because somewhere we understood that they are talking about the internal auditors. On perusal of the internal audit report, that means work, he finds that not only verification of the inventory was attended by the internal auditor at regular intervals, they are also made in respect of inventory valuation also they have attended. So first of all, physical verification they have done, inventory valuation also they have done. He also attended the inventory count at the end of the financial year. Who? This Keshavraj. And no prima facie adverse inferences were drawn by him. That means he did not found any fault in the inventory. Internal auditors also did not find. Same thing they have reported. However, on going through the inventory reports, he gathers that inventories are being held for considerably long period of time before being sold. Okay, now question of being obsoleteness can come into picture. And internal auditors have not taken these aspects into consideration. Oh, what do they lack? Do they lack competency now? And big problem comes. Why they are not able to see that? Because one very small aspect I am able to verify. What is that small aspect I am able to see? That it takes long time for the inventory to move. Okay, why this fact is not verified? Should he choose to now rely on the inventory valuation performed? Because obsolete sense means, okay, because inventory valuation says cost or NRV, whichever is low. It can be possible since it is slow moving, your NRV may be less than cost. If they have ignored this point, that they must have valued at cost. So their valuation may not be proper, right? Now, should you rely on the work of the internal auditor here? No, because it's going to impact. See, one of the important element of valuation is NRV. And NRV strikes to you only if you see this obsolete part. So can you rely? Answer is no. Okay, so now you have to talk about this reliance on the work of the internal auditor here. You say that for a particular balance class of transaction disclosure, higher and assessed ROMM, more judgment will be required. So the moment you see that the inventory value is very high, this particular point, okay, you have got high inventory valuation, like the risk is very high. So more judgment will be involved in planning and performing the procedures and evaluating the results. That means the moment you sense the ROMM is very high, so you may have to take more judgments now. Okay, because your impairment of inventory can come into picture now. In such cases, auditor need to perform more of the procedures directly and use less of the work of the internal audit. If the judgment was low, he could have used the work of the internal auditor, even in inventory valuation also, because it is straightforward. But here, he saw certain set of discrepancy also. He saw that the competency is missing and high risk is there, and inventory valuation includes your impairment, judgments will be involved. So further 200 says higher the assessed ROMM, more persuasive evidence auditor need to gather. So there is a risk of inventory obsolescence. It's significant ROMM because more judgment is going to come. So auditor has to perform himself directly. Very nice question, students, as per 610. Are you clear now about this point? Now, to what extent external auditor should, okay, chalo, you started to use the work. When you start to use the work, to what extent you should be involved in the external auditors? External auditor should get involved. You should sufficiently involved in the audit. That means because you take the sole responsibility. You should simply don't 100% rely on the internal auditors because they lack independence. And next, you have to communicate external auditor how the external auditor has planned to use of the internal audit function. So you should communicate with the TCWG at the beginning only. Okay, what is the reason here? Because when you share the overview of planned scope and timing, when you are going to share the overview of planned scope and timing, SA 260. What is that SA 260 you are supposed to communicate? 4 elements. You remember, students? 4 points. 1. Your auditor's responsibilities, like objective of audit, planned scope and timing, significant findings, independence in case of listed entities. See, like this, no, your mind should have a map. And planned scope and timing is part of the second element now. Overview of planned. So when you are talking about the overview of the planned scope and timing, and in audit strategy also you are going to consider, should I use the internal auditor? So at the initial stage only, you have decided to use the internal auditor this year. So it is very important you have to communicate to the TCWG because they should not misunderstand tomorrow. They should be aware, okay, how much you have planned to use. And tomorrow, no, they should not get a feel, Baba, our external auditor is not doing any work only. He is relying on the internal auditor. Like the dance teacher, or if a school teacher is everything is giving homework only, then we start to think, what is happening in the classroom? Everything is given in the homework. We only have to verify. We get one bad image about the someone. That's why it's better you communicate to what extent and how you are going to use the internal audit function at the beginning. And the third, you are using the work of the internal audit function. Now, if you have planned, then you are actually using. This is called actual use. What happens now? Internal auditor's report is there in your hand. See, point number 1, you need to see whether can I use. Second, if yes, then which and how, to what extent I can use. And the third question, actually using it. Okay, what is that first you need to do? You need to discuss and coordinate with the internal audit function. You need to tell them, you need to understand how much, what is the materiality they have said. You have to read their internal audit reports, and you have to perform sufficient procedure on the internal audit function. And this is very similar between a principal auditor and a branch auditor. You see, first you need to discuss and coordinate, the first point. Then you have to get their work and do the review, and you have to perform certain set of procedures, like have you properly planned and performed, have you obtained evidence, are your conclusions are appropriate. So this is what you need to evaluate. And what type of activity you need to perform, they have not told. The nature and extent of the audit procedures shall be responsive to the judgment involved, risk involved. Internal audit functions support objectivity and competence, like we have also seen in the SA 600. To what extent you are going to visit, to what extent you will give the questionnaire, to what extent you are going to review, that depends upon the materiality, that depends upon the risk involved, that depends upon your knowledge. So similarly, to what extent and which type of work, what type of audit procedure you are going to perform. So you may decide not to rely on certain work, you may decide to again test it again. It depends upon the judgments involved, risk involved, how much objective they are, and what is the level of competence. And the last thing, you should evaluate whether the external auditor's conclusions regarding internal audit function is remain appropriate at the end. Please understand, you need to evaluate at the end. Why? Okay, at the beginning of the year, the organization structure was like this. Then you got the fantastic confidence. Then you see who are those people. They are also chartered accountant. Again, your confidence level increased, and you saw their way of working. So this person being CA is very systematic in the work. That means you decided, when you decided your strategy, when you are planning your scope of work at the beginning, you decided to use their work. And afterwards you started to use their work, different type of work. But what happened? This board was controlled by one person. He died. His son took over. His son's attitude about the business strategies are totally different. It's not like father. Father is talking more about the governance, okay, because he is talking about the stability strategy. But the son is very aggressive. He is talking expansion strategy. So what he may do, he may replace this person again back under CFO or CEO. He may bring this person under his control. He may remove that chartered accountant and bring somebody else. First, in this thing we have seen, the internal auditor was one retired bank employee, and how he got a job? Through a recommendation. When it happened? Somewhere at the middle of the year. So now you tell me, students, should you not evaluate from time to time? Is your relevance still appropriate? This is what you need to do. Okay, so these are all the audit procedure which you are going to perform if you decide to use the work. Like, how do we map this in our mind now? Okay, shall we do this particular mind mapping? Because with this, we are done with the first part. Now, what comes is only the second part. So let us take, was there any question? Yes, there are two questions, illustration question and test your understanding. Let us see. I have marked it as a priority one. CA Amboj is a practicing CA appointed as an internal auditor of one textile company, and he is conducting the physical verification at the end of the year and handed over the report of such verification to the statutory auditor. Okay, internal auditor performed the physical verification of the inventory and handed over for his views and the reporting. Now, can CA Kishore rely on such report? Absolutely yes, but he has to comply with certain things. The physical verification may not require much, it may not be risky, it may not have much what they call judgments. In such cases, you can do after performing certain things. Now you say, as per 610, determining the work of internal auditor, you have to see whether their organizational status supports subjectivity, competency, and systematic approach. Requirement number 1. Second, they said you should not use the work if this is not going to support. Third, if you decide to use their work, you have to discuss with them, read the report, perform sufficient audit procedure, check, evaluate objectivity, competency, and evaluate whether the conclusions remained appropriate regarding the nature and extent of the work. Okay, whether it is appropriate at the end. So in the instant given case, he has to check whether all these things are done, review the report, test check few of the items, and check whether his conclusion is appropriate related to the objectivity. Yes, so final responsibility related to the opinion of the statutory auditor. Ultimately, statutory auditor is responsible. He can rely, but subject to these activities. It's not that he should not do only. Yes, very easy question. Now, Up Down Limited is in the doldrums for last 2 years. That means some problem must be going on. That's why the name itself is Up and Down. The demand for its product has declined drastically. Going concerns to strike to you immediately, because you don't know what this question is all about. Statutory auditor of the view that situation has put into, see, this is how your mind should start predicting, students. By looking at the words, no, your mind should be working, your model should be evaluating, okay, maybe this, maybe this. No, it's the internal auditor has helped the management in devising the strategy to deal with such risk. Should he? Yes, because this is what the consultancy work is, like how to come out of this particular doldrum now, how to improve this. Can internal auditor suggest? Yes, because that's the consultancy work to come out of the situation. The plan includes venturing into different product lines using the same plan with certain minor modification. Now further, the internal auditor has prepared estimate of revenue generation, also cash flow, because in SA 570 in intermediate you have seen, if you identify any instances of what is it called, going concern thing, okay, fall in the demand is one of the financial indicator. Now as part of the response, you need to evaluate the cash flows. Okay, internal auditor has prepared. Can statutory auditor place total reliance on this work of the internal auditor? And since they have done, going concern must have addressed, answer is no. You cannot perform, because the going concern assumption requires very significant judgments. So you have to use their work as much low as possible, and you have to perform it independently yourself. Okay, they must have done certain things, they take their work, but don't 100% rely on it. That's what you need to talk. Greater judgment is needed. Okay, and you have to perform that, import yourself. Going concern assumptions require significant judgment, so you cannot place the total reliance. So you can write your form, your answer, like you can talk about the objectivity, competency, where you cannot use, where you can use, etc. So this is all about your first part of your essay 610. Okay, students. So now we will start making the notes, and let's see how these concepts will connect. So we will write now concept number 3, using work or assistance of internal auditors. Using the work or assistance of internal auditor. So responsibility and all we need not quote. So first thing, scope also we need not talk. What is the objective? Okay, we will talk about the internal audit department. First concept we will talk about the internal audit function. So what is the scope of internal audit function? Primarily, they have what? Assurance and consultancy. What is the objective? Why do they exist? They exist for 3 reasons. 1, governance related activity. What all those includes? What all your governance related activities they are going to evaluate? 1, ethics and value. So they are going to evaluate ethics and values. Second, management accountability. Third, communication of risk. The second objective they do exist, or what they are doing, is risk management. How? Identify the risk. And second, detect fraud risk. And the third element is related to the internal controls. When you talk about internal controls, they have got 4 internal controls: operations, financial reporting, asset safeguarding. Okay, even though they are not given compliance. Yeah, because I'm writing the answer of SA 315. In 315 component of internal control, these are all the 4 elements they have told. So anybody would have put X for this particular thing. So this is what you need to know all about the internal audit function. That's it. The next one, what is the objective? What is your objective of SA 300 and 610? So it has got 3 objectives. One, determine whether work or assistance can be used. How? Check their competency, objectivity, and disciplined approach. Second, if using work, okay, if you decide to use this work, whether work is adequate. You have to check whether work is adequate. Third, if using assistance, direct, supervise, review. If you plan to use the direct work, direct, supervise. Okay, so this will go like this. So first I need to talk about, now see there are 2 elements called work and assistance. I need to talk about the work. So I have to broadly classify into 2. Work is A, assistance is B. In the work, first thing I should determine, can I use their work for these 3 elements. Now if you are using work, then whether it is adequate or not, then there are other elements. Okay, first I will write A, using the work. Okay, what is my first step? Evaluate whether work can be used. So what are the factors I need to consider? Objectivity, competence, discipline. Then you should not use if the objectivity is not there, competency is not there, discipline is not there. So once you have put a tick mark, this is there, this is there, this is there, then my first work is done. This portion is done. Okay, so once you decide to use, second, determine nature and scope of work that can be used. Okay, now which work you will use, to what extent you will use? So I can say that nature of work, scope of work, and other considerations. I can group it like this, other considerations. One, what is the nature of the work you can use? Testing of internal control. Substantive test. Test, but with limited judgments. So any testing of internal control means test of controls. You can use them. Substantive test also you can use them, but with the limited judgments. Third, observation of inventory, or I can say inventory count. Why is such a big word? I can write tracing transaction. Compliance, you can use their work. Okay, and review of the subsidiary. Yeah, these are all the 5 points you can write. When it comes to when you talk about the scope, external auditor shall make significant judgments. That means you don't give or don't rely on or don't depend too much on certain areas where significant judgments will be involved. Where? One, in planning and evaluating evidence. In planning the audit and evaluating the evidence. In planning the audit, significant judgments are there. In evaluating the evidence, significant judgments are there. High ROMM area, significant judgments are there. Less objectivity, you should not use. Low competence, you should not use. So in such cases, you only have to make the decision. Now, what are the other considerations you need to keep in mind? One, sufficiently involved. Be sufficiently involved. Don't give 100% reliance on them. And second, communicate with TCWG. Okay, how you are planned to use, you have to communicate. So before you decide to rely on particular work, before you decide how much to rely, these are all the factors you need to keep in mind, and that is called determining the nature and the scope of the work that can be used. Till now, you have not yet used it. The very first consideration is what is their department is all about. Are they objective, competent, and disciplined? If it is failed here, then you need not go to the next level. This is past. Then you know what type of work I can give, what type of work I cannot give. Okay. Then third comes the third element here, because we are talking 1, 2, 3. The third is using the work. Okay, when you are actually using the work, what you are supposed to do? 1, discuss and coordinate. Okay, you have to talk to that internal auditor, ask them what they have done, how much samples they have taken. Read reports. First you talk, before only you give, before using the work, you discuss with them, coordinate with them, you tell them well in advance how many samples are required. And after, this also I can say is very similar to SA 600, where principal audit procedures. First you give an advice. Here advice is called to discuss. Then review their work in the form of reports what they have got. Third, perform procedures on the work. That means they have done the inventory count. Okay, fine. Out of 20 count, what they have done, you send your staff to one of the count and see, verify, okay, whether the count is perfect. Like you perform some procedures, whether the conclusions are correct, they have properly planned, they have done it, sufficient evidence has been gathered, etc. Okay, so the next is your, what is your nature and extent? Like to what extent you will read, you will perform the procedures. Nature and extent of procedure depends upon, so to what extent you will do, that depends upon judgments, ROMM, how much they are objective, and how much they are competent. Okay, like if you see the internal auditors are not competent, 20 locations they have physically counted. So if you feel that they are not competent, you will send your staff to 8 location out of 20. Again, you will cross verify it. But if you see that the internal auditors are very good, okay, less judgment is there, less risk is there. So out of 20, you may randomly check only one location and see whether their work is proper. If you see they lack objectivity, competence, or high ROM judgment, you may increase this to say 15 also. Or you may totally scrap also their work. So that's your choice. That's your judgment. So how much and to what extent you will do, that depends upon the judgments involved, level of competence, objectivity, and the risk. And last thing, okay, we can leave it. Like we have to check whether it is appropriate at the end. Okay, our conclusions are still appropriate. That means still can I rely on them, because their competence could have been changed, objectivity could have been changed. That's what we need to evaluate. So the next point you have to write here, point B. I hope you are clear now how we are determining. So with this second activity, we have performed this. So now I need to do this and this. So what is my B? Using the work, you write B, point number B. Internal audit direct assistance. Okay, friends. So I think, yeah, we'll continue in the next class because it's another big story. Let us go back before that. And let's just go to chapter number 16. Let's just cross verify. Have we covered everything? So determining the nature of the work of the extent. Okay, we should not use when this is the thing they told. Now, determining the nature and extent of the work of internal audit function that can be used. So the external auditor shall consider the nature and the scope of the work done, relevance to the overall strategy and plan, and adequacy of the work, considering objectivity, competency, systematic approach. Same thing we have covered. Now, which area and to what extent we can be used? Which area means nature. To what? Sorry. This is again, see, if you see, no, they have discussed only this much, only this point they have discussed. They have discussed this and they have discussed this. Done. One picture they have given. With they have completed that first part, work. So the second part is about the assistance. Okay, which we will see in the next chapter, next class. Because one small addition you need to make here, there is nothing but the documentation. This is one thing. Otherwise, everything is same. So the next class we will check about the direct assistance. Yes, thank you.